Hey, yo, it's Guido coming at you with the Tactics Talk. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back. On this episode, we have a replay analysis for Porani in his T110E3 Tier 10 American TD. Casemate TD, one of the most heavily armored, at least frontally, tanks in the game with a big boomstick. He's in a 357. He's got a great setup here. Top tier in a Tier 10. On the opposite side, he's looking at a Type 5 and an FV 215B 183 and a couple of artillery and various cats and dogs. Things that can get around to his side and cause him issues. But the other two, the FV and the Type 5, are certainly an issue face on. So let's take a look what Porani does. He is loaded into the east side on Fjords, and he's headed over to the south combat zone. There's a couple changes down here actually with the recent patches, and I don't know actually if what I'm going to show you here in a minute existed with patch 1.0 or if they just put it in when they rebalanced Fjords just a little bit. But let's talk about positioning real quick because that is always important and germane to this game. He has selected or elected to go down to the south. I like this. It's a Casemate TD. A lot of Casemate TD players are going to park right here at about H8 and wait for the battle to come to them, which is a terrible, terrible idea. This heavily armored TD does incentivize people to move forward based on it is a good assault TD with the armor. However, other TDs also need to move forward in order to bring their guns to bear. On this map in Fjords, if you sit back there by your cap, especially on the east cap and even on the west cap, although few people do sit back at the west cap with TDs, if you sit back there, you've taken your gun out of the game for a large percentage of the game. Percentage of the game. And what I like about Porani is he has moved forward here. He's bringing one of the best guns on his team forward, all that armor, and now he's going to be a massive bully force here. The IS-7's already doing the same. He's got a 257, a T10, and a Scorpion G so far. So let's talk about this, and I'll get to the little thing I figured out here in just a moment when I show it to you. Decent amount of tanks in the middle, which is a bit strange. It's more meta than it used to be, and a pretty good amount of people up into the north. Porani is careful here. Now let's reference back. There's an artillery shot in from the enemy team. Looks like it is... That may have actually been his. Is that his? No, I don't think so. Based on the direction it came in, probably somebody up in here, more than likely, has driven his M53 all the way up and over here. That may have been a friendly shot, actually, because his is sitting here as well. So, unknown. Could have been a friendly shot coming in there. There is a 53-55 on the other side. Very interesting. Anyway, let's get going here. As I was talking about, the Type 5 and the FV are something to be cognizant of, and if he just simply drives around the corner and meets those two, he could be in a lot of trouble and lose a bunch of hit points, and then he will get shot down by the other three guys with relatively faster reloads, the 5.7, the T10, and the Scorpion. So he's kind of being a bit careful, at least initially, and I think that's wise. He's moved up here. You can see that the size of the gun on this thing is really keeping people honest. He gets in there and gets a piece of that Scorpion, and there's 3 big bounces, 1,200 damage, 1,330 total to be exact. And there's that artillery shot coming in from the 53-55. You can see that where he is right here is a pretty good spot. You can actually get in there, and as soon as I get my cursor back, he can actually get up here and shoot down onto those guys. So that's an important bit of change on this map. Artillery can support. For the longest time, Porani's team would be vulnerable from artillery, I was going to say TDs, but artillery sitting back up in here, and now it looks like you can, with good positioning, hit it from both sides, which means that corner is not completely invulnerable to artillery. They're going to mess around with this T-34 just a little bit, but he's really just trying to stay alive. Last thing Porani wants to do is get down in there and get tracked and drowned. T-34 is having enough trouble. Look at the water kind of rolling around with the tank. That's actually pretty cool. The water effects in this game have improved a lot, but you know, I don't know if that matters. I guess it matters enough for me to notice it right there. Let's put it that way. And he's got a whole crowd. The north is being held. The 55-58's actually up there, which is an interesting position. I may have to try that someday. Down goes the T-2065, probably a rental. There's a poor T-28, a couple artilleries. that 53-55 on the enemy side is going to have all kinds of fun until he dies. He's able to hide down in the little corner. I'll show it to you in a minute. Drops 849 on the T-28, just goes right through that armor in the front. Down the T-28 goes. The Type 5. So there's the Type 5. The Type 5 did not go forward. The FV did not go forward. The FV is probably up on the flat up there. Those were two of their best guns, which essentially allowed Porani's team to no respect rush their entire force down in the south and guaranteed a loss. I might have taken that shot, but Porani's being careful. Pretty much guaranteed a loss for the red team. Two tanks of the entire setup don't go where they're needed and basically lose the game. That is how important positioning is in this game. It is absolutely critical. The red team really wasn't going to recover from that. A good portion of their 9s and good tanks got wiped out for the loss of no green tanks in the south, simply because there was no fear factor of the tanks there. Porani bought his fear factor, and they basically just walked right over him. The IS-7 and Porani working in the 110E3, and they just absolutely massacre that south. The rest of the forces win/hold enough, and you find a Type 5 camping at the cap. I mean, you're just not going to win games if that's how you're going to play this game. And if you do, it won't have a whole lot to do with what you did. Type 5 dies pretty quickly. That's something you do need to worry about in a 110E3 or heavily armored tank. Those big dirt cannons simply don't care very much about your armor. Little block. That's 3,900 block now. Getting that reload. I think Porani ought to just pulled back there. Tried to cover up my lower plate as much as possible. I mean, it's a win and you're grabbing hit points, but that guy's not going anywhere, right? And if you'd have kept some standoff, you might have had this shot. It wouldn't have incentivized him to go past you. You have plenty of friends to kill him, so that's not a problem. But you probably could have kept him in front of you. And the Scorpion's going to go down here. 5,435 damage, 3,980 blocked, 1,000 assists in there, in just a complete bulldozer because of bad positioning by the red team and good positioning on Porani's part. This is actually one of the issues with the 357. It does create games like this if the top tiers don't get to the right place. There is a flip side to that coin though, because in a case like this where you do get the tier 10 at the top, it is fun to do once in a while because then you're just the biggest dog on the block, right? And that's kind of why you're playing and grinding. You want to get to that top tier and have some games like this where you're just the dominant force. But I think it would be more interesting, obviously, if their dominant guys went somewhere useful and it wasn't a complete raffle stomp at 15 and 5. Now, I'm not complaining necessarily about raffle stomps. The reason they happen are manyfold, and I've just talked about several of them in there. But because of the way the game is designed, the cascading effect of losses is pretty likely, especially if you position poorly and lose too many good tanks early. Those two things put together are going to cause you to have a lot of trouble and be very difficult to come back from something like this game right here. But nice job, Porani. I just threw a couple tidbits out there for you. I don't think you really did anything massively wrong on this game that I could point out and say, well, you shouldn't have done this or that definitively and it would have changed things. The real quibble I had was the very end, just trying to push into the T10 and letting him get by it. But if it was in your thought that, you know what, I got plenty of friends behind me, I don't care, let him go by and die, and I'll go kill a Scorpion, then good on you, because that's what happened. Nice job with that game, man. That is all I got, folks. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of Tactics Talk Replay Analysis for Porani, and as always, we will see you.